Great.
Good afternoon, Holly from Canberra, and pronounce that again, country.
Yeah, so I'm here today in Canberra, which depending on who we speak to, we're told it's Ngunnawal country, but also we've heard elders say that it's also Ngambri and Narrabri, sorry.
Right.
So I've been taught by friends to say all three peoples as part of acknowledging this land. But of course, I don't actually live on Ngunnawal country anymore. I live out on Wabunja Yuin country, which is about an hour and a half away from Canberra.
Right.
But I'm just in Canberra today.
Good. Okay, so I'm on Garigal, and I've been told for many years from my childhood as well. So, welcome. And this is our today talking to Holly, and I have the most shocking trying to pronounce your surname. Please.
Oh yeah, don't even try. It's Bakerbolikovac, Hollie Bakerbolikovac.
Is that Croatian?
Yeah, it's my name's Baker. My husband's name's Boljevac. So bring the
Oh,
two together.
well,
Yeah.
mine's Healy-Quintard. So Healy's the Irish and Quintard's the French. So my husband being the French. Oh, I didn't realise that. So that's nice. That's a nice little sort of, here we are. Anyway, so what I'm going to ask you, you've actually given me some lovely things to ask. How exactly do you spend your days?
Yeah, well, most of my days I am a counsellor, clinical counsellor, and that sort of I'm lucky enough to be able to work mostly from home now, which means that I see people online or I have people come on land, and I have a little what we call a farm milieu. So there's all
Sorry,
the a farm milieu or milieu. I don't know how the word. It's probably a French word, is it?
milieu, yeah,
Milieu, there you go.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a little, we've got 4 horses, we've got 5 goats, we've got chickens, we've got turkeys, we've got ducks. And so people who come on land to do their counselling sessions can interact with any or all of that. Or we just sit around in the bush. We're right on some pristine rivers of Mongalo. So people get to just be in wilderness in their therapy. And that's how I spend most of my days. And then on weekends, I run retreats and things like that, specifically for women, in terms of like they're still therapeutic, I guess, but we're working much more around being on land and with land and what that means to be in relationship and connection with the space that we're in. Yeah.
So how do people find you?
Well,
they find what you're doing.
Yeah, my business is called Institute for Self-Crafting.
Right.
Self-crafting is this kind of concept that I came up with that really means just creating the life that you want to have, right? Creating a life that sets you free. That's the tagline. And it's all about being able to, curate or be that maker of your own destiny. So they can, everyone can look up Institute for Self-Crafting, and that's where you find me, or look up my name. Yeah.
I'll add that to my website so that people know. I think I actually did in part of what I wrote. I'm pretty sure I had a website on there in the invitation. And self-crafting, creating your own life. And how long have you been working on that level of creating?
Well, that's one of those questions is like, where does it begin and where does it end, Jill? Well, yeah, I've been doing this kind of work in one way or another for probably, where are we at? 23. So at least 23 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
It all started with a little witchcraft shop in Canberra like 20 years ago. Yeah. And before that, it started with running circles and holding spaces for people and doing tarot readings. And before that, it started with like doing more natural health kind of spaces. And before that, it started with sitting with my mother, who was into the women's movement and sitting in women's circles. She goes, all right.
Yeah. No, exactly.
So it's been a long time. Yeah.
So that's it. So it's actually a lifetime of creation, basically.
It really is. Yeah. And that's something that I think people need to realize. Like I often say, like, why are you comparing your space that you're in right now to wherever someone else is? Because it might look like they're doing really well, but you don't see the 25 years before that, we've had as many failures as we've had successes to get to this point.
Exactly that. So a lot of different parts. So you've mentioned the groups, the martial arts, the witchy things, the farm.
Well, I don't think I did mention the martial arts. I think that was before we were talking, before we were recording. Yeah. Yeah. So that is another piece that I do. I have a little martial arts school here in Braidwood, where I live. And that has been a piece since I was 3 years old. I've been involved with martial arts. And at the moment, I'm really interested in trauma-informed martial arts and mostly working with neurodivergent spaces. So people that are on the neurodivergent spectrum in some way, and how we bring safety into the room when we're coaching. So I use it specifically around martial arts and natural movement, but I'm just interested in that across the board. Obviously, that's important in therapy and even my retreats, when I run retreats or when I run the big event like Wise Women Gathering, one of my main focal points is that, like, how do we hold that trauma-informed space so that it's safe for everybody, regardless of where they're coming from in their life. So my martial arts school is kind of like my little experiment room for that in a way.
This is the thing I love when I'm filling out or in the application and also going through what comes out of the Wise Women's Gathering is the fact of this trauma and understanding that we all are in a space where this can possibly happen. I don't think a lot of people even think about that they can be in a space that is trauma induced. And in fact, a lot of people are walking around, I think, with a lot of trauma going on. So if somebody, so this is where I will put this up on my website, but somebody listening to this or looking at this and suddenly realize, oh, so reaching out to you would be through the website that we've just mentioned. Or if people can't find it, typing in some certain words that you'll come up. I'm just wondering, the people that come to you, what have they gone through? What sort of strands to find you? Not everybody would be looking up Self-Crafted Life or the Institute, or if somebody was. Do you? I mean, for instance.
That's a good question. I think we're so I think a lot of it is word of mouth because I've been around for 20 years or so, doing this work. But also I get found through Psychology Today. So as a clinical counselor, I'm listed on sort of those more I guess generic like counseling pages or psychology pages, where if somebody's just Googling like, I need a counselor in this town, then I'm going to show up on those pages. And then I guess they start looking at profiles and realize, all right, well, she's a bit different. She's a bit magic-y, and look at her hair. And, she's done psychedelic training, all these pieces that I guess come together for people so that they can decide like, they want something that's a bit outside the box, they're going to come to me. And I do really work with women. Like I find just naturally, I don't even have to like market myself to women, but that's who comes. So it's not that I won't work with men, excuse me, in the one-to-one space, but I certainly don't work with men in groups, but I just got to clear my throat because I'm starting to get a bit rough. So what I find is that it's women that show up into the one-to-one space, and they're often women that have anxiety. And, I wouldn't say there's any specific one type of trauma, because I think there's a general kind of set of traumas that women show up with, right? Like the sexual assaults, the eating disorders, the family trauma, which everybody carries. So there's certain things and domestic violence, like these things show up in my practice regularly without me having to say like, hey, I'm the counselor that does that, right? It's just that they are the women that show up. But the anxiety is a big piece, and that is what I market to. I market to that kind of space of women who are like trying to do all the things and are doing really well, but then they crash. So they, there's a crash and burn, and then they go really well again, and then they crash and burn. That's my niche, those kind of people.
It's really interesting now because that's where it's going again, because everybody somehow got through 2 years of lockdown, that type of thing going on, all the other, things going on with it, and got their jobs back. And now they're in this situation where they've got to do everything. It's like I get women coming to my classes saying exactly this. They're saying, I can't believe what I'm doing now. It's just so much more, and I just can't. I'm so stressed, and then I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I can't get it all done if I didn't. Before that, I just want. In fact, one woman said to me last night, I want lockdown again. Because I'm not coping at all.
And
it's women too, because they do seem to take the load. And like I said to her, she's got 2 boys, and I said, aren't the boys cooking yet? And she said, no, they can't get it together. And I said, that's really not fair on you. That's really not fair that these women do everything, go to work and the whole lot, not, and the boys are staying home playing their games after the school. But anyway, that's what I'm hearing more and more and more. These women are really feeling trauma at the moment. What age group are you finding that you come across, or is it right across the board?
I mean, that's right across the board, but what I find come to me specifically is sort of, we say like maybe like 30 to 50.
Yes.
That's kind of my bracket. Yeah. And I
And
think that's
menopause
a
as
yeah, there's two pieces to that, I think. There's a group of women that are coming through that are either choosing not to have children or are not ready to have children yet. So that's maybe in the younger end of the bracket. And then on the other end of the bracket are the women whose kids are old enough that they can kind of make the space, right? So they're not like in the toddler phase or the really hard phase. So what I've started to do is think like I'm really trying to hold space for that. And so I'm offering lots of different options for women to come in to work with me in case they do have toddlers. So for example, we run like nighttime moon circles in the new moon and the full moon. We do that at my place and in Canberra. And so the idea there is like that will work for some women, whereas the 3-day retreat won't work for some women. And then the one-on-one sessions will work for some women. And so I just keep trying to broaden the space in a way that I can still hold it, but
well.
that it's accessible to as many women as possible that want to do this work, because it is pretty rare to do the kind of work I'm doing. And I don't want anyone to be excluded because of the fact that they're women doing the things that women do, because that's also what I'm trying to help with, right?
Have you been criticised being called too woo-woo, for instance?
Oh, probably, but I mean, I've always been woo-woo, so I wouldn't even know, Jill. That's not something that makes any difference to me.
Northern Beaches of Sydney. In fact, I saw a guy that told my husband, you shouldn't listen to what Jill says, she's too woo-woo. And Didier said, I don't listen to particularly what she says. I make my own decisions about woo-woo, and I'm very happy that she's woo-woo. He's French. He didn't even know what woo-woo meant, but he knows.
That's cute.
But yeah, so it's quite interesting that I've just
I worked out a long time ago that I'm not for everyone and I don't need to be. Yeah. Like I will make myself available to anyone who wants me to be available to them, but I'm not going to try and impress or convince people that aren't on the level. Like it's
yeah,
just not necessary.
that is
It shows like people come because they want to work with someone like me that might have woo-woo. They don't, I don't get people that are like straight and like, oh, I want a very serious psychologist. They just don't come.
no, it's true. That wouldn't anyhow. So you created a special diary which has been in print since 2015. Is that how you keep track of all the things you do?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's called the Lunation Annual Planner. And
Yeah.
I actually created that for me. I wasn't planning to sell it. Like I was just trying to think about, the way that I see the world, which is very cyclical, and
Yeah.
realizing that there was not a planner in the world or a diary in the world that was doing it in that way. And so I created one that I printed on my printer. And then as I was posting about that, people were like, oh my God, I want to buy one. So
Yeah.
she's kind of grown on her own. She's just been picked up and
Oh,
taken into the
beautiful.
world. Yeah.
So this is vision and actualizing your big dreams. This is how
Yes.
to do it through this.
Yeah, that's how you do it. I'd
Yeah.
like to say that it's actually not even a diary. It's a workbook that's going to change your life, because it's very much it's based around that cycle. It's based around the moon or the seasons, and the knowledge that we can't, like what you were saying before, we can't go all the time. There has to be
Oh,
periods of like calm or, internal periods. And
that's
so when the planner works with the moon, with the full and the dark moon and everything in between, then we're able to like really visually see this is a time for some quiet time, internal time. Like it really directs you. So it's not like a normal diary where you're just going every day and there's no breaks. Like the planner really forces you to take those moments of review and rest and
I
then replanning, re-aiming. Yeah.
to put these people that are telling me at the moment how stressed and how full on they are, that they need to be actually looking at something like this. I do tell them things like this and I send them all sorts of stuff, but like this is actually something that can be a physical thing that they can actually put the information they require in order to help them to live a better life, where it goes into the journey of up and down and balance, which is what it should be.
Absolutely. And also, like, I was noticing that there were a lot of, well, I'm a list writer, as my housemate would say,
Yeah.
but also, this idea of like we have a gratitude journal and we have planning for the year page, all these different things. So I just wanted it all in one place. So
Yeah.
it has a gratitude check-in point every day. It has like the 3 most important things you're going to do this day to get all the other shit out of the way. Like it's just it. I needed one book that had all the things that I was trying to
I
manage at
don't
once.
need this.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I go, I've got a gratitude book. I've got the book that's got this in it. Then I've got this little bit of paper and then that bit of
Right.
and that. And it's like, oh, and then I find things because we've been, we traveled for 10 months around
Mm.
and we lived in this little tiny space and then we came back and we got stuff out of storage and I found things exactly like this that I've written that I must do in 214 that I still haven't done, that type of stuff.
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, so this is very important. So this is a year planner.
Yeah, it goes for the whole year. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. What is vision?
Well, so we talk about vision a lot. I know it's
Getting
a
the world.
question I gave you, wasn't
Yeah.
it? It's I talk about vision a lot in terms of that planner and that work because vision is like the world of which you wish to live in. Yeah, it's the greatest desire of the world that you want to live in. So it's vision is not like I want a new car, right? That's a piece along the way to the vision of how you want to live in the world. But vision is like if I imagined, say, my perfect day or my perfect week where everything was exactly like what aligns to me and feels really nourishing or whatever it is that you need and want in the world, that's the vision. And so with our planner or with whatever we're doing in the world, we're constantly like taking our bow and arrow and aiming at that vision, like right in the center. And sometimes we get it on track and sometimes we miss. Sometimes it gets to the edges and we have to constantly re-aim because whatever else comes into our life can get in the way of that and we've got to reset ourselves. But having that vision that's out there, I mean, I'm a Sagittarian. I have a lot of Sagittarius in my in my houses, so I'm always thinking like, how do we get to that next place, that future vision? But the piece I think where people slip up in whatever their big wild dreams are is often the things that get in the way, right? Like as we're moving through life, something will get in the way. Your car will break down, your kid will break his arm, like whatever it is. So we have to be able to reset ourselves daily to keep working toward that vision because otherwise what happens, like we get so off track and then we fall into a slump and then, we feel like we're getting pushed backwards, all those kind of things. Whereas if you're constantly like aware that your vision is there and you're aiming all the time toward it, you can't get pushed back. You can't get into a slump, and you can take those rest periods, but it's still there. You still see it being right there.
So what if people are having difficulty trying to make their vision?
Yes. And that's where the therapy part comes in because sometimes it's not that simple. And we have to sort of a lot of the time we have to sift, right? We have to sift through all the rubbish that we've collected along the way to work out what actually is ours. That's a piece. But also like what I've found watching the women that use the planner year after year, and a lot of the people who use the planner will come at the start of the year to me and have like a vision clarification session. So they sit down and they say, right, this is what I had last year, this is where I feel my year's moving, like, and then we get some really clear words around what their vision is. So that comes from my spellcraft background too, right? Like really being specific about language of like how we're going to create this magic at this time. But what I see is over time, the vision changes. It has to, like, it can't be the same for 20 years, but it's part of that tweaking process, So it doesn't matter if you don't know exactly what your vision is now. You start somewhere. You start with like, it might just be as broad as I want my life to be easier than it is right now. Okay. If that's the vision, then you keep moving towards that. And each decision you get, you ask yourself, if I do this thing, will it help my life get easier? And then that's the way that you direct yourself, right? And then over time, as things get easier or as things change, then you might have more clarification around what else you want to add to that vision.
Do you believe in manifestation?
I don't like the word manifestation. I could run a whole workshop on that and have in the past. I believe in actualization. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I think that manifesting just like kind of keeps telling the universe that you're trying to work it out. Well, it's not even woo. I just think
it's a bit like nothing in a way.
Well, I'm very wordy, Jill. Like I'm very hyperlexic in the sense of like words are really important. And so the true definition of manifestation just means like it's like asking the universe, how do I make this happen? Whereas actualization is I am making this happen. This is happening. It's actualized in my reality right now. So it's manifestation for me, it doesn't quite hit the mark and it feels chasey. It feels like I've got to chase something all the time. Whereas actualization has a solidity where I can be like, right, this is the thing. This is where I'm at. Does that make sense?
It does. I do a meditation with my clients and I get them to see, feel it, say it, see it, feel it. make it, and then release it to the universe. And
Nice.
once you release to the universe that this vision, then people have said that actually seems to make it happen much stronger than
Yeah,
if,
beautiful.
oh, let's just have a manifestation and let's just see what that looks like and let's feel it and all that sort of thing to actually release.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think
for
it's just
sure.
important. So I just wondered on your perspective. I have used the word manifestation because I think I manifested my husband many years ago,
Mhm.
but just because I decided things. And anyway, though I've used it quite a bit, and I've written quite a bit about that manifestation sort of
Mhm.
thing. But I'm very much into visualization, and I like the word actualization. I think that's fabulous. I think that's a really
Mm.
good terminology. So, is that part of your strategy in counselling people as well? Is actualization of what they want?
Yeah, it comes in. I mean, I'm classed and insured as a clinical counselor, but I do just as much coaching as well. And my background of martial arts and coaching movement and that physical mobility, like
Yeah,
the coaching comes in, as it probably does for you when you speak to women. Like it's just part of who we are.
yeah. Mine,
So we
mine's
do find that
a
it
ballet
shows up.
teacher in ballet. So teachers learning classical ballet, which is very strict and very sort of incredibly ridiculously strict, and becoming a teacher and always having this thing about teaching people. So then I've brought things together, and that's how I work with teaching, and I have a fusion of everything. So nothing is just one straight thing anymore, which is what
Well,
you're.
and that's what happens over time, isn't it? The longer that we be in practice, it shapes itself and it changes. And I think that's how women have always done it. Like
Yeah,
the hedge witches of the past didn't have like one shingle on their door that said like I am just a body worker or something, like
yeah,
it's all the collective of information that we pick up along the way that then gets worked and sculpted and structuralized into our work.
love it,
Yeah.
beautiful. Wise Women's Gathering. Now you must tell, because it to me is the most incredibly beautiful event that I had fell into somehow. I don't even know how I ended up being the first one, which was 2022, and this one 2023. I know how I got there then, but the 2022 I saw an application, and I remember not knowing who you were at all, and sending you emails of desperation saying I can't click on this and I can't do this, and you. And then next thing I got a thing back saying, "Oh, they've invited you. You're coming," sort of thing. And I had no idea what I was coming to.
Wow.
I've been to two now. And how long have you been running these? Because there's been,
That's a good question. I can never remember.
yeah,
I think we've worked out, I've done, oh, I don't know, Jill, 3 or 4 that I've ran on my own. And before that, there was someone else running it, and I ran the maidens camp at the conference.
at
So
the
I've
same
been
place.
involved. Yeah, I've been involved with the conference since the beginning,
Yeah.
as a worker in that
But it's
space
called
with the
Wise Women's
maidens.
Gathering. That's what it was called.
Yeah, it was still called that. Yeah. So the
Okay.
lady who started it, her name was Stephanie, and then she moved back to America and I took it over from her at that point. And so then, like, obviously, I've tweaked and changed it quite a bit in that time. And so the version of Wise Women Gathering has that foundations in what Stephanie's vision was. And then it's become what we've all created over the last few years. Yeah.
Oh, it's very special. It's so special. And women of all different ages and ideas and if different backgrounds and it's just incredible and how they somehow everybody comes together and becomes one. You know,
Yeah.
the opening circle is just so beautiful. Can
It's
you?
the space holding. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So what is it? Let's tell people what it is first.
Yeah,
So Wise Women Gathering is a 3-day, 4-day conference. We specifically call it a conference because it's not a festival.
yeah,
Um, and we have 4 streams at the conference. So we have the stream of herbal wisdom or plant wisdom. We have the stream of holistic living and health. We have the stream of women's mysteries, and then cultivating community. And so they're like the 4 areas, or almost like the 4 quarters that we focus on. And then it's really about bringing women together on land. We have this beautiful property that we're able to access in the Hawkesbury. And it used to just be like an outdoor adventure camp, and as things change over many years, like everyone has to change their business models, and so they're great to bring us in and allow us to use the space in our like woo woo ways. And we have all fully organic catering over the whole weekend. It is a fully catered event. People can't bring their own food. That's a piece of it, because the holding of the kitchen space and the eating together is a really important element.
really good.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great food, and we just love Linda. She just has worked so hard to get our menu exactly what we want, and we collect as much local food as we can on the menu, all those things. So we're just constantly like bringing in the threads of what I think is important to community living and to making the world a better place, I guess. And we have about 35 educators usually. And yeah, just like lots of sessions over the weekend and focusing on those 4 streams. And some women come for the first time, some women keep coming back. We all sleep on the same land. We all, it's a little mini village happens over the course of 4 days. And then what's been amazing is those villages kind of continue outside. I know you've got stories about that, Jill.
Yeah, I know. And I'm still having conversations with people. Actually, Kath, and I'm going on to her radio program, which I think you're doing that as well.
I've been on her radio program, yeah.
So yes, different things, different people that you still talk to, and someone's come from there's come to my classes, which is it's fantastic. But it's what can I say? It also creates that knowledge that how incredibly amazing we all are. It's everything about it is uplifting and positive. There's no negativity about it. I'm giving it a big plug because I think more
Great.
people should know about it. What's your sort of limit of people? Is there a limit number?
There is a limit. Yeah, we'll never go over 200 people. And at the moment, I think this year we were sitting at about 150. The numbers were a bit down this year, I think, post everything.
Yeah.
And expenses and things like that for people. But we will never go above 200 because we want it to still feel like a village space and
Yeah.
have that community aspect. And, what we would do instead would be to maybe put 2 on a year if it got to the point where we had to like expand the numbers, because I don't want it to be, it's not a city, it's a village,
Yeah. Let's have the maiden's journey, that part of it. You said you had that when the other woman had it, that's what you were doing. What is that maiden's journey?
Well, what it's been, it's actually changing over the next year because we keep morphing things as we work out what works. But what it has been previously is, we have a kids camp and then we have a maidens camp, and it means that women can bring their children to the conference, but then the women can go and do the workshops, and the kids are looked after in the kids camp. And the maidens, they're sort of the 11 to 14-year-olds, like they don't want to be with the little kids, and sometimes they're not really interested in the big workshops for the adults. So they've had their own space, and so there'll be there has been one leader who's looked after them for the weekend, and she'll plan certain events and meditations, and so the girls are doing things similar to what the mums are doing out in the workshops, but it's more specifically related to like their age group and what they would want to be interested in.
I found it really fascinating. I sat in on one of where they were debating actually, and the girls were 13, 14, and the questions being asked, and then the women were older, and just hearing the different responses was really interesting. Yes, they were young, but they were very mature in the way they saw things and how they responded. So I think the environment, and also probably the mothers that they have and the homes they come from, perhaps also generate people to come together with able to discuss and talk openly without all the other stuff that must go. I'm sure these days, I used to be a school teacher and I can't stand it. But all the stuff that goes on in the schools where they're all subjected to having to not say anything and not be open about things. Be interesting to see what comes out. I don't know now with education what's happening. It's yeah, anyway, that's another story altogether.
Oops, well, I think one of
I'm gonna jump on. Yes.
I think one of the pieces that I hold really strongly in all of my work, but particularly at Wise Women, is the non-competition. Like, women exist in a world where we're pitted against each other constantly, yeah, as from this culture. And so we eliminate that in every possible way. And so, I do talk to the educators about like there's no hierarchy here. Everyone's as important as each other. And actually the people that are listening to you are just as important as you. Like, you're not special because you're a teacher. You just get a platform for 90 minutes like you, and that holding that space really firmly, I think, is part of why it feels so safe for everybody to be in that space.
Yeah, it's a pity that other people didn't see it that way, because there is, when you say women pitting against each other, because they certainly do, in the quite a bit in the industry I'm in actually.
For sure.
Yeah, because it's been for a long time male dominated, and women are coming to the fore very much. It'd be interesting to see what's happening in the women's sport as well. I'm sure this is probably happening there too. That women are really aggressive about the spot they want to hold, because they've been held back for such a long time. I think
Mhm.
that's the big issue, being held back and not being able to. So yeah, so all of this is actually again back to Wise Women's Gathering, allowing people to have a platform where they all are equal, as you say, and I think quite incredible.
Well,
And
and I think too that like yeah, in a culture where women are told like you have to be a certain way, and like and when predominantly the reason we do things is for money, right? So we've learned that women sell an image of ourselves for money, like in one way or another, right? And so then
yeah,
now we have women selling images of themselves to other women to be a certain way, which is all about comparison and competition. And
it's
to break that is really big work.
very much. And the fact that we live in I mean, I've got pulled into it so much because I was back in, doing aerobic championships, and it was all about the body and what you're wearing, and the whole look of, and then, I've freaked out a lot because I go, shit, I don't look the same as I used to, that many years ago.
Mm.
And having to now compete on another level of being basically who I really am rather than be the look. And
Well,
that,
and when you do that, you're not competing anymore, Jill. You're just being you. You don't have to compete.
yeah. No, it's a fascinating side of life and women and womanhood. Now, I'm just looking, is there, at here, I've got all these lists of where I find you, or where everyone can find you and join the newsletter. So I'll put all this on the website as well at
Mhm.
the end of that. Now, I am now going to talk you much into health and healing field. What do you think is the key to healing?
I think the key to healing is relationship.
Mm.
Yeah. And sometimes I call that relationship, like REAL relationship.
Mm.
And because that, like that piece of connection with other mammals is the thing that, is how we develop a self, through the people that are around us. And, understanding is how we understand the world through the people around us. And it also is the way that we, like are nourished on a spiritual level, right? And we know that biologically, like humans can't survive on our own. If we, evolutionarily, if we'd been on our own, we would have died out in the great big world. We need to be with other mammals for so many reasons. And so, and at the same time, the key to ill health is poor relationship or bad relationship, right? And so that's the space that we want to heal, is that space between a broken relationship and healthy relationships.
Yeah,
That brings the health. Yeah.
a big forced image of all of that the last few years, where people were separated and divided, and so the healing, there is a lot of healing going on now because of that. The isolation for people must have been horrific, for people who were living on their own and couldn't go anywhere. But that's
For sure. Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that it screws with our nervous system to be in a reality where you don't get to be around other people, or even animals can be helpful if we don't have other people. Like it really messes with our nervous system, and nervous system is the deepest level of ourself, of our physical self. So it's really important. Yeah. And then the work to get back to that of being whole again, or having a nervous system that feels okay, it can be a lot of work.
mm. So I'm going to ask you to continue to tell me something that we haven't spoken about,
Great.
and let me know what that might be, and we can discuss more, because I it's something that's important for you to let people know.
Okay. How long are we going for, Jill? We going until
We've
6:30?
been going on now. Well, we could. I usually go sort of 45 to an hour. That's what I give, 45
Okay.
minutes to an hour. So depends if you've got another uh, 18 minutes of talk, or
Let's see what happens. I could talk for days.
no, I think I probably could too, and I probably jump on things that maybe not so much that should it. Perhaps I don't know. I always think that. I don't know.
I love to, I mean, it's your show, Jill. You take
Yeah,
us wherever you want us to go.
it's the areas that I keep reading on my telegrams and things, like telegrams page. Anyway, that's all another lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Sure.
So
Okay. Well, I will talk to that, because something I think about a lot is the space of like, yes, we could be looking out in the world at all the problems, which there are epic amounts of. And I think a lot about what I call the overculture. Yeah. Like all the problems of the overculture that we're faced with, whether it's, what people might call the patriarchy or just gender issues, violence, there's just so many pieces in the overculture to focus on, and it can be fucking overwhelming and exhausting, right? And we can also like do the work here of the things that are important to us and get back to our real self and in relationship with ourself. And that, to me, that's the work. And that's why I really like to focus on those one-on-one spaces and the retreat spaces. I mean, even my retreats are quite small. I only have about 20, 25 women in a full like weekend retreat. And that's so that we can be in connection and community together. But what we do there is we focus on like eating food from the land that we're on, doing handcrafts, traditional handcrafts that women have done forever, but using as much as we can the stuff that's on the land. So we might be dyeing with things that are from the garden or from the bush. So I've got quite an extensive garden, which of course at this time of year isn't doing much because I live right on the edge of the mountains where it's very cold. But we've got things like lamandra that we can weave with. We've got bracken that we can dye with. So really bringing people back into the smallest area of themselves is so important in terms of like actually healing the world. Because if we keep looking out there at the overculture and all the problems, yes, they're problems, but we can actually address them in ourselves without dealing with them out there. And that's not to say that people shouldn't deal with them out there. That's fine. Do whatever you like. But my interest is how do we bring it back closer and closer to ourselves? How do we be the mothers that we want to be, or be the aunties that we want to be? How do we be the workmates that we want to be that is actually going to affect the people right next to us? Because that's a way to break the overculture too, right? That's the radical acts when women sit together and we do crafts with shit from the land. And literally shit, like sometimes we use horse shit in our processes, like that's a radical act of change. Well, we've used horse shit in dyes, which as it turns out doesn't work, of course. We often use it as offerings in our work. So if we're making a fire, we'll do that. And then of course we're using it on the land, like we're moving horse shit from one place to another to nutriate the land and that sort of thing. So it's really coming down to like, well, and we can get right down at roots level, like where does our shit go? Well, on my land, it goes in a bucket and it goes into a compost system and it's sawdusted and it turns into earth itself. So we can break the overculture in so many ways that are really, so close in on ourselves. I'll pause there. You go from there.
I'm going to ask you, with the land you're on, you said in Braidwood.
What
size property are you on where you are doing this?
Yeah, it's 100 acres, and it's 100 acres of like thick bushland with a lot of sort of hilly situations and then creeks running through. So we've got access to all the things, but it's totally off grid.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people are wanting to do right now. They're actually trying. In fact, we talk about this particularly since we left Sydney and in a caravan. That's what we wanted to do. We're back in Sydney now and all the shit in Sydney. Now, the question. Have you always been in this environment, or did you come from city to there?
No, I grew up in a really tiny town in Victoria that no one's ever heard of, but the close town that people have heard of is Sale in Victoria. And so like Lakes Entrance. So it was across the lakes from Lakes. And it's a tiny town that is 4 kilometers wide and 7 kilometers long and is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So by the ocean, like what's it called? Between Victoria and Tasmania, whatever that sea is.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's Bass Strait's on one side, and then there's actually on the Gippsland Lakes, with their salt. It's a very like special little part of the world. So
we went down there. We went visited and hung around down there actually in the caravan and down the tiny little town that said it was the something tiny town.
Right.
What's the name of it?
Oh, the town I grew up in is called Locksport. But there's others nearby that maybe you went to, like Golden Beach or Sea Spray. That whole little area was my grow up space. So I did grow up in like small bush kind of area, but then when I went off to uni, I moved to Canberra and I lived in Canberra for maybe 10 or 15 years.
Oh, right.
And then went back out bush. Yeah.
So this property that you're on now, how long have you been there?
I I'm so bad with times. I want to say 7 years, but I have no idea, honestly. We've been out that way since 2011, I think we left Canberra. Yeah.
Sounds very special. Sounds really special.
It
And
is a really special little spot, and we're really lucky that it's a piece that it's pretty much surrounded by cattle farms, but the piece that we're on just kind of got left. So it's still got a lot of the natives, it's not just like cleared area.
all right.
Mm.
So what's Bradwood's the town? What's the area called?
I guess it's a weird spot. I don't know exactly what they call it. I mean, it's the Queanbeyan Palarang Council area, but then it's sort of the very edge of the South Coast and the very edge of the Southern Highlands and the very edge of the bottom of the Snowies, like where that kind of all meets, right? So if people want to imagine it on a map, it's going from Canberra to the coast. If you kind of draw a line across, it's kind of smack bang in between those.
A lot of various sort of energies, I imagine, that you are sitting in by the sound of things.
Yeah.
Now, where are we with something else that you would like to talk about? The importance you've already done in trauma informed. I'm just looking at what you wrote here. Trauma informed spaces to practice relationship, how to find you. We've got that. And anything else that we could discuss about
We haven't talked about animals, really.
horses?
Yeah.
Okay, so horses. So we spent 2 months in Tapatelli, which is up in the highland, up above Nowra, and fell in love with horses too. And I was brought up in Duffy's Forest in Sydney, which was all a horse area and still is, but never really had a relationship with a horse. And just in a very short time, we fell in love with some horses and realized what incredibly beautiful, special beings they are. And now every time we go, oh, there's horses, there's horses, oh, there's horses. It's there is something magical, isn't there, about horses? And do you feel that they can their energy actually so just looking at them in their eyes and feeling them and knowing that they're either they have a gentleness and a beauty except and a fierceness and a strength all at once. And
yeah.
how do you work with horses?
Yes, absolutely. They have all of those things, and they are. So I just find them endlessly fascinating. At the moment, we have a 4-year-old Brumby, and the rest of our herd are quite elderly or like moving into elderly. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see those dynamics from that young horse. But I mean, my favorite way of working with them actually is in the groups. So we have I run a year-long program called Women Who Dream with Horses. And so the retreats are part of that program. And so women are coming out onto the land to be with the horses. And we do a lot of observation actually of watching what the horses do in the herd and then reflecting back how that shows up for us. Like, is that something that shows
What
up in our lives?
horses do in the herd? So,
Yeah.
so because the people are there, or is that so that they change their behavior because the people are there?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, there's things there's things that have happened when other people are there that I would never expect to happen. Like the dynamics are different, right? Like the relationships between these horses. I used to say, oh, so Cora behaves like this, and then she'll just go and do the complete opposite when people are watching. So something happens in the dynamics where I really do think they pick up what people need to know and see, and everybody can watch the same herd and get the experience that they need out of it too, right? So it's not like everyone's picking up the same thing, but we do find over the course of a weekend that we'll get some themes, and so they become the themes that we work with therapeutically across the weekend. So last time, trying to think what the theme became. Oh, there was a lot of stuff around the people pleaser and the speaking up kind of elements in ourselves. And so we were seeing that play out in the herd, and then people were reflecting about themselves in that way, whether or not
They recognized it in the herd as well.
yeah, yeah. Like I'll do a little bit of education around, horse dynamics and just the psychology a little bit so people understand, because obviously all animals are different in the sense, if you get a dog and cat playing together and the dog's wagging its tail and the cat's wagging its tail, it doesn't mean the same thing, right? So people need a little bit of information about what is happening, what we're seeing, but I only give the slightest bit because I want people to read that for themselves and see what it says to them, and the feelings. We do a lot of observation on our own self of what does that feel like when she does that out in the paddock, right? When I'm watching that relationship happening between the two horses, what happens in me, and how does that feel in terms of my life and what happens in my everyday life and things like that. So we can go deep in on those kind of questions.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But then they do eventually get to actually go and touch the horse as well. It's not only observation, but we start there.
The horse is ridden or just or not?
No, none of my horses at the moment are rideable. The young one, because she's too young and she's basically wild, and so we're going to work with her over time. But the others are all a bit older and not really very keen. But that could change at any day because I'm always looking for unicorns to add to the herd.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. We think those two white horses we saw, they were like unicorns. In fact, I did a video with them with the music. It was very unicorn. The saddest of all things is that in fact, I just thought about that. It's like, it hurts even. These two beautiful horses, and someone said, those horses never come to people.
Mm.
And so these two horses, there was my sister, my niece Didier, and I, and a dog. And we were walking in the bush, and these horses came to us, and they looked like unicorns. They were white with a beautiful white tail, and they came to us, and we were patting them, and all that.
Wow.
Going, how gorgeous, how beautiful. And they followed us along when we kept walking. And anyway, then we went, and we told somebody else that lives there, and they said, oh, those horses never go to anybody. But the saddest of all, they were both put down. One had cancer and the other one had something else. And we were looking at them. I don't know. I would think, my feeling was, and I still feel it, they look so, their eyes, because I did iridology many years ago. Their eyes were so beautiful and clear, and they were like they were talking to us, and they were passionate. And I wonder now, in retrospect, were they saying, or were they knowing? I don't know. And that we were maybe could talk or do something. It's just that to me is probably a very strong experience of horses and human.
That makes me think, Jill, maybe there's some work that you like, and you don't have to do this, it's just a thought. The thought, like maybe going into vision and seeing if you can talk to them again and see what message they did have. Like if you're not quite sure what it is now, you can always go back and meet them again, right? Because we know that life doesn't stop when life stops, so to speak. Or spirit doesn't stop when life stops. So going into vision and connecting with them again, because I can hear when you talk about them, like you still feel like they're right there.
Well, see, my passion is absolute human movement and music are my two absolute passions. And the first track I put on, I was doing just a live stream thing myself, and talking about people joining. And the music that came on is the music that I put with these horses with the video. And it's actually the music from, I think it's not Game of Thrones. What's the other one? Anyway, it's the music from that, and it's like it's so powerful to see those horses and that music with it. So I think there's something there because of the music and the feeling. So yes, I'm going to look at that.
Have a play around with that for sure. Yeah.
When we were leaving to go back to Sydney, we met another horse. And that horse, it was gorgeous, like stunning horse. And I spoke to the girl. She was only a young girl, like a 16-year-old with this horse, and she said, she's the Barbie of our horses. Loves her hair done, loves all the fuss. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Personality.
They totally have personalities, yeah. So we run outside of that program and that retreat, like we open the space. If we don't have enough people filling the program, then we'll open it for people to just come in for a day. So people can come and do Horsewoman Day and be part of that kind of retreat space.
I need to know more about this.
Yeah, it's not very far from Sydney, Jill.
Braidwood's about 3.5 hours, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep, 3.5.
We're actually looking, that's another story again, we're actually looking at other space ourselves.
Yeah, nice.
But
space with horses by the sound of it.
Yeah, I don't know. But just it's sort of coming back to Sydney after being gone and seeing a lot of Australia, but not all of it. It changes your perspective, and we'll see. We'll just see.
For sure. Yeah.
Now, health and healing. We've talked health and healing because that's all part of this as well. Because I mean, but just by doing these sort of things and your vision and finding yourself, as you said, and doing I'm going to look up this up as well, your lunar, I need to do that. Your calendar, not your calendar, what did you call it? Sorry, your
The planner.
lunation planner, very
Yeah,
important. But all of that is part of health and healing as well, because when you can
it is.
get your mind organized and get yourself sort of really in that sort of planned situation, and try not to take yourself out somewhere else, because everything can grab us, everything all the time, all around us. I get very distracted. I've got, this going here and that going over there all the time. So it's that trying to focus. So that sounds like a very important part of what you are helping particularly women do. Anything else?
Well, I mean, if there's space, I can talk about that wellness and healing aspect more. So years ago, I had I had chronic fatigue for years and years, a post-viral chronic fatigue. I think very similar to what people now call long COVID.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had to work out how to, that's a whole story, and there's plenty of content out there if people want to go look that up. But I had to work out how to get out of that long-term illness, such a chronic illness. And I put together this kind of program called Self-Crafted Wellness afterwards, like when I came through it, because people again were saying like, oh my God, share it with us. Like, what did you do? And I wanted to write this big scientific book, and people were like, I don't care about the science. Just tell me the steps, right? So that was a book for a while, and now it's a part of our platform. It's like an online course that people can do on the platform. I don't publish it as a book anymore. And that's a Self-Crafted Life platform. So that, like working with retreats and things, we always try to bring in as many of those self-crafted wellness elements as possible. So we do the cold swims, we do the being in nature, do the barefooting, all those, and the food, the ethical food, the food that's produced locally, like seasonally, there's all these pieces around mitochondrial wellness that we can really insert into our retreats when people are with us, that they then, like, it's so nourishing, right? There's so many levels of nourishment happening. It's the connection with people, it's the being on land, it's the wellness pieces, it's the vision, it's the being with animals. Like, there's so many layers of it. And then when you step back into your everyday life, hopefully we've been able to help you integrate that in such a way that then you can carry the pieces forward that you actually need in your everyday life. And you don't have to live on land to do that. You can go back to the city or back to your busy everyday work schedule, but have enough elements that continue for you through that. That's something I think about a lot, because not everyone can live like I do. Yeah, not everyone wants to live like I do.
Yeah. When's your next retreat?
September 15th or whatever that weekend is. Whatever that weekend is, around September 15th is the next retreat.
Hey, I'm getting awards in Melbourne.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Yes, and then I've been invited to present in New Zealand, which is so it's interesting.
That's amazing.
But so another story. But so the 15th is actually a Friday.
Yeah. So it's Horsewoman Day would be on the Friday. And then how we do it is we have some people that come for the whole weekend, but some people come for Horsewoman Day on Friday.
Oh, right.
And so there's a whole lot of different ways you can again, like trying to make it work for everybody in the way that's going to be best for them. So you can come just for Friday Horsewoman Day, you can come for a whole weekend, or on Saturday we stop doing horsework halfway through the day, and then we have about 24 hours where we're just doing the seasonal crafting women's space stuff. And so that's very much around, handcrafts and singing and ceremony, and we do ceremony late into the Saturday night. And it's very much also connected to whatever the season is. So obviously this will be spring coming in this time. And we do some altered states work. So that's another area that I'm well trained in integrating altered states. So we do that in ways that aren't illegal, like they're not psychedelic altered states, they're other altered states.
You did mention psychedelic. So you're using mushrooms?
Not in groups. Like obviously that's not legal in Australia to do that, but we do other altered states. Like we've done vulva starve this time. Well, I don't want to say what we're doing this time. That's a surprise for everybody that's coming. We've done what did we do the first time? I can't even think what we did first round. Oh, ecstatic postures. I love ecstatic postures. So there's lots of different ways to get into an altered state that doesn't involve psychedelics. So that's what I like to focus on with the Saturday night ceremony stuff.
Vibrations and music and dance.
Absolutely. Music is so important in that piece for sure. And it even is in when we do psychedelic work too, right? But yeah, so I'll put the psychedelic piece away, and maybe we'll talk about that in a second, and I'll just finish this bit just to clarify that for people. And yeah, so we do that Saturday, Sunday work where people come in just for the seasonal piece of the retreat, and then they leave, and then the horse people that are staying for 3 days do another horse piece at the end, and then everybody goes home on the Sunday. And there is options to camp even further either side of that. So again, it's just
camping.
there's all these add-ons that you can do. You can add on to be catered for. You can choose to just cater for yourself if you're not into like doing our food. So there's a lot of different ways people can make it work and make it affordable for them as well. Yeah.
So you offer like glamping type stuff. Is that what you're offering?
We've got what we call a mid glamp. It's a swag with very luxury bedding, like amazing bedding, and a like sort of gazebo over the top and lighting and things. So it's not like I think when people think of glamps, they think the big bell tents and all the beauty. Yeah.
King size beds and
exactly. Yeah, we're not quite at that stage yet. We're working towards that on the property, but at the moment you can get a mid glamp option, or of course you can just bring your own camping, right? Or you just sleep in your car or whatever.
So the people who with you, you have other people running this with you, or you're doing all this yourself?
It's me with a team. So we have my friend, oh, well, you'd know Sam from Wise Women Gathering. She does all the food. She's our caterer. My housemate Millie is my journey woman. So she's kind of like my apprentice that's there, always helping out. Desley, who you would know from Wise Women Gathering, she's our second therapist. So when I'm doing those retreats, I'm not acting as therapist on that weekend. I'm the teacher. And then Desley takes that counseling space and holds that piece. Yeah. So that's kind of our core community. Oh, and Anastasia, sorry. Anastasia does the craft piece. And she's like this wicked thread woman that can do all the wild crafts. So she holds the space for that. Yeah. So we've got that little team that puts it all together.
I'm going to add all these bits onto this because really it sounds amazing.
There's a lot of links, Jill.
Quite a few links there. Now, I think we're going to finish off and tell me anything very important that you feel that people might like to hear or know. Or I was saying talking breaths because everyone's so frantic, but it's you and I. We can just breathe together if we like. But this feeling of you want to share something else that's very important, or have we covered all that you like to share?
I feel like we've mentioned the psychedelic piece a few times. I probably need to clarify that for people. Yeah. So I trained in the certificate of psychedelic assisted therapies, which all that means is that I've learned how to best sit with people if they're going through a psychedelic journey for therapeutic uses. So just in July in Australia, the TGA changed some of the restrictions around both mushrooms and MDMA so that we can get those on a special access scheme so that people can do that therapeutic work. But as it stands right now, so what are we, end of August, it's not a very clear space yet. The only way you can get access to that is through being prescribed by a particular psychiatrist. And I think so far in Australia, there's one of those. So it's not an easy thing to access yet. I'm part of the AMAP, which stands for something like Allied Medical People that are interested in psychedelic stuff. I can't remember the exact abbreviations, but that group is really trying to make the psychedelic space much more accessible for people. I think it will stay very restricted for a long time yet. And it should be, because it's a serious medicine and it's serious work that we're doing, and we don't want just just because you're a therapist doesn't mean you know what to do in those altered spaces, right? So that's kind of where that's at. So people you can message me and you can ask me if I'll sit for you and we can have that conversation, but you're probably going to get a no. That's the honest answer, because it's really not legal yet to do that. Yeah. But what I can do as a therapist in this role now is help people integrate when they have gone underground and done psychedelic work before. So that's a piece that a lot of us are doing that are trained in that work. We can take you after your journey and help you integrate the pieces that you've experienced. So, like your friend that saw God on his ayahuasca, we can really work with that. Yeah.
Oh no, he's very happy he saw God. He's not. He's saying that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. It could be him.
But what's going to add to that? Oh, sorry. What's the course you did the training? What's it called?
It's called the Certificate of Psychedelic Assisted Therapies. I did it with Mind Medicine, but my teachers actually who taught me are not there at that school anymore. And so I only recommend the teachers that I've trained with, not the school that I was at, right? Like, I think that's true for any lineage.
more people talking about this as therapy, because it was used as therapy back in the 70s, early 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was banned because Big Pharma wanted. Well, anyway, it was banned, and
Well, and I think an important piece to think about, it's something we've touched on a lot through this conversation today, is there's things that have been done forever, but it doesn't mean they've been done well. Women's spaces have been done forever, but it doesn't mean they've been done well. And when we add that trauma-informed piece and those conversations around integrating ourselves into any of the spaces that we're in, whether that's a fitness situation or a therapy situation or a drug situation, like there's so much more that can be added to make it a safer and a much more beneficial, like journey-wise, a beneficial journey for people. So that's the exciting thing about, I think, any kind of health, and that the whole health world right now. We've got so many more people awakening to the fact that it hasn't been done great, and here's all the ways that we can make it better, and we are experimenting and moving it forward at a faster rate, I think, than it has ever happened before in terms of the safety piece.
And people don't know which way to go, because there is now, it's so gigantic. So it's finding that right person to suit, or the right course, or the right therapy. That's a little bit of a jungle too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always tell people, like, you're hiring whoever it is that you're working with, whether it's your fitness coach or your therapist. Like, I'm not the boss of therapy. I work for the person that's coming to me, right? As you do, Jill. So people are allowed to, like, basically interview them. Like, don't be afraid to ask people before you start working with them some questions that are important to you, and sack them if you don't like them.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's a good one. Okay. Well, I think we're going to finish off, and it's been very inspiring. You are an inspirational woman. You really are. And it's a different look for many of the people who might be on my website, which I'd love them to see. And that's what I'm trying. I had Mignon last month, actually.
I saw that on your website. Yeah, that's great.
And what she does. So that is my whole idea, is to show women who are creating space that is amazing for other women, and that's what I'm doing. So you're definitely one of those people, and so I thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully other people do get to see this. So I'll have, as I've mentioned, the video is going to be available, and it's going to be up on my website.
I really appreciate you bringing me here, Jill, and having a chat. And I love what you're doing in the world, and I love your enthusiasm. Yeah.
Someone said something to me today about that.
You're passionate, and you're doing the things that you align passionately with. That's what the world needs, more of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, thank
Beautiful.
you, Hollie.
Thanks, Jill.
Stay a moment if you wish. I'm just going.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry?